Hey guys, it's Bree at Blossom and Ranch Farm. Today I'm going to be showing you my favorite varieties of Lisianthus and giving you some tips. Let's go. Today I am harvesting Lisianthus and I'm also doing some cover cropping. So I wanted to, before I cut them all down, I wanted to give you an overview of the varieties that I grew this year and which ones I really liked and which ones I probably won't grow again. So let's go take a look at the Lisianthus field. Okay, here we are at the Lisianthus row. You can see I've already started harvesting some here, but I am going through and harvesting a lot of these and then also cutting them down so that I can plant a cover crop like we have here on this row. And I did grow some new varieties this year, including this one. We'll talk about it here in a second. I do net my Lisianthus. If you've watched our Lisianthus growing video, you probably already know that we net these, and we net them just because they tend to get top heavy and floppy. Especially, I like to wait to harvest them until they're a little bit fuller, and so they can get a little bit floppy. And you can see some of these ones that aren't inside of our corralling kind of tend to get a little bit weighed down. Here you can see one that's kind of starting to fall over a little bit even within the netting. Probably need to start it a little bit lower, but usually our Lisianthus get taller, and this year they just didn't get as tall as normal, and I think that was just really down to the heat. And I do use this jute netting instead of the plastic netting that a lot of growers use, because that plastic netting is really kind of an environmental nightmare, not just because it's plastic, but because at the end of the season, when you discard it, or even if you use it for a couple of years, it is a major nightmare if it gets into any areas where there's wildlife, just because they can get so tangled up in there. This jute biodegrades, so we just actually throw this right in the compost pile, and it comes pre-woven in these squares, so it's quite nice. And we just kind of have it attached here to these T-posts, and that helps hold them up quite nicely. This variety, the first one that we're going to talk about, is a Voyage variety, and the reason I know that it's Voyage is because it has these beautiful ruffles, and the other Voyage variety that we grow has these ruffles too. And this is one of my favorite varieties, and I'll show you why. Not only are the petals so sweet and ruffled, they also put so many blooms per stem. So you can see here, for example, how many, this is one stem. So let me give it a cut so you can see exactly what I mean. So this is one stem of Lisianthus. You can see how many blooms are on here. Now this is normal. You can see this one down here is all wilty. This is just how Lisianthus bloom. They bloom from the bottom up. So you can see some of these newer stems that haven't quite fully bloomed yet. This one down here blooms first, and then these ones up here bloom. So you can even just discard that bloom if you don't want them to brown. You can just cut it off after it's done, and then these ones will continue to bloom later. This is why you get a nice extended bloom period out of your Lisianthus. But I wanted to talk more about kind of the ones that I liked and what I didn't like this year. So obviously I love the Voyage. I grow a couple other different colors that we'll look at in a second. So this variety is one that is called Voyage Champagne. And you can see it kind of has light pinks, whites, creams, but a cooler pink to me than the other one that we grow, which is the light apricot. Now what I do like about these is, again, now this is an unpinched stem. So if you pinch the stems, which you can do, you'll get several shorter stems that are a little bit thinner. And you can see actually here's one that was pinched. So down here is the main stem, it was pinched, and this is a side shoot. Shorter, smaller bloom, not as many. So I really prefer unpinched Lisianthus. I like that they get taller. But that being said, it can be nice to pinch half and leave the other half unpinched so that you stagger your bloom period a little bit more. So the ones that you pinch will bloom a little bit behind the ones that you don't pinch by about a couple weeks. So that can be nice to help extend your bloom period. So usually what we do is we pinch half and we don't pinch half, but I really prefer the ones that are unpinched. They're just... All right, let's go take a look at the other Voyage that I grow. So here again are all those Voyage Champagne together. And then we'll go take a look at Voyage Light Apricot to compare. So Voyage Light Apricot they are very picked, and that's because we have U-picks, and clearly they are a favorite during U-picks, and I can tell that because there's so few. In contrast to the Voyage Champagne, you can see that these are more ruffled, and they're also a warmer peach, so really more of a color versus that champagne, which has really more whites and creams in it. This one has more color, and it's also a warmer color. So I think I really prefer the light apricot. Let's pick a bunch and then we'll compare to the champagne. All right, I've got them over here in the shade so you can see a little bit better the comparison. Again, here is the light apricot and here is champagne. All right, next I'm going to show you Voyage White. So Voyage, again, another one of the colors that I like. You can see as I harvest, I'm stripping all the leaves here into the walkway. They just kind of break down into mulch. That's totally fine. So we've got the Voyage White here. And now a couple things that I like about the white. One is that it's really more of a cream. It's always hard to find like bright white, but this is a little bit of a creamy white, but definitely lighter than the Voyage Champagne. So there's really no hints of pink in this white. There are, however, these brown ones. And so, as I mentioned, the Lisianthus bloom from the bottom up. But what that means is that these ones turn brown here at the bottom once those top ones are blooming, which is fine. Other than with the white, I think it really shows more. So you can see even just standing back, the perspective of how many are browned. But still really beautiful. They still have all of those inherent qualities of the Voyage in that they're roughly many blooms on one stem and nice strong stems, especially if you leave them unpinched. So again, because of how top heavy they get, you can see how they do kind of lean, but we have some that are outside of the netting here that are just fine. If you want to try not netting the Lisianthus, you always can try that. I've just done it. I've really found that they do better if they're netted, especially if you get a lot of wind. But that being said, let's go ahead and harvest our bucket of white, and then we'll move on to our last two varieties. So I've got a lot of these harvested. We've covered mostly my favorite varieties. Now I'm going to show you two others that I do enjoy growing, even though they're not necessarily my favorite. So I'm going to show you another one that I do like growing that's actually not in the Voyage series. And this is in the Corelli series. And so these are not as double ruffled. What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't knock that over. They're trying to get into the alfalfa fertilizer. Anywho, all right, so you can see the Corelli are not as ruffled and as double as the Voyage. They're a little bit simpler, but this can be a really nice Lisianthus too, because you see this contrast in the center, and I love the inside darkness of this one. It just adds a little bit of drama, and I like being able to see a little bit more of the inside of this flower, so you can see there's a little more, you really can see into the center. And these ones can be really nice too if you want to reflex your flowers, which means bend the petals back. You can open these up a little bit, and they really have almost a Cosmo look to them, or a hibiscus flower, really nice and open. So these ones, even though not my favorite, are one of our top ones still. They have a lightish pink color. Again, this is a cooler pink compared to the apricots with the peachier pinks. And nice long stems. These ones get quite tall. And actually, I will say the Corellis, of all the ones we grow, probably need the least amount of netting. So they're pretty upright. Even any of these that kind of grew outside of the netting are still fairly upright. And you can see some of them aren't leaning on the netting at all. So if you don't want to net, the Corelli might be a good option. And still have multiple blooms, maybe not quite as many as the Voyage, but still have many blooms per stem. So this is the new variety I grew this year. If you are in flower farming circles, you might have heard of Farmer Bailey. He sells plugs. Now typically we grow all of our Lisianthus from seed in soil blocks, but this was a new variety I wanted to try, so we did purchase these as plugs from Farmer Bailey. And they are called Poino Cho, and they're from Japan, I believe. Now, I like them. Pros, cons, let's talk about it. So, nice strong stems, I will say. Actually, relative to some of the other stems, these ones are really strong, even though my soil is dry right now, which sometimes can make for weaker stemmed Lisianthus. These ones, even as they age, stay a little bit stronger, less likely to bend, so I like that. And lots of blooms per stem. Let's see if we can find an unpinched one. And you can see how many flowers, how many blooms are on this one stem. But for me, the downfall of this one and why I'd rather grow Roseanne Brown, which is a similar kind of brownish peachy color, is because of the size of these blooms. So these are small compared to the other Lisianthus. You can see a Voyage here compared to a Pucchino, how much smaller they are, and they don't tend to really open. They stay this kind of cup form. So they are what I'd call a single Lisianthus, so there's no layers of ruffles like with the Voyage. They're really a single, and they're also quite small. So pros, cons, again, you get lots of blooms, and I think we can do something cute with this. I'm going to try something with these. But I'd prefer probably to grow the larger ones, and I will say my U-Pick customers did not like these ones as much, and you can tell because there are still a lot of them here compared to especially the Voyage series. Let's get a bunch of these cut, and then we'll do a quick little wrap-up. All right, we're back up here at the cooler, and I've got my armload of my favorites, the Voyage variety. So we've got our Voyage Light Apricot, our Voyage White, and our Voyage Champagne. And if you watched our Lisianthus video, you'll remember that I said that this Voyage series was my favorite. Not only is that because of what they look like when they're grown and blooming, it's also because these are the easiest ones I've found to start from seed. They germinate really easily, they grow really easily. So in terms of growing them from seed, the Voyage variety are also, I found, the best for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these guys into the cooler, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you guys around here next time at the farm.